On Sky News Australia, this is the Rita Panahi Show Overtime.
Welcome to the Rita Panahi Show Overtime. Coming up today, we'll be bringing you the latest on the unprecedented attack against Israel and the international reaction from the White House to Beijing to right here in Australia, where last night there were shameful scenes at our most iconic landmark. We'll cross to the UK to speak with Darren Grimes, and Prager University's Alexis Wilkins will join us from the US. Kinsey Schofield will bring us the latest on the royals, and we'll also speak to her about what Harry and Meghan can learn from Posh and Bex. We'll inject some light relief into proceedings with lefties losing it, and my word, haven't the lunatic far left disgraced themselves in recent days? But first, let's go to the latest headlines with the Australian newspapers' Sophie Ellsworth. Now to the biggest story in the world right now, and that's what's happening in Israel. We know that at least 900 Israelis have been killed since Hamas's surprise attack on Saturday. Many more are injured, and the death toll is expected to rise further. Israel has now ordered a total blockade of Gaza. The fate of the hostages Hamas has dragged back to Gaza remains a huge concern. We're talking about infants to elderly Israelis. Today we learned that at least 100 hostages are facing execution after Hamas vowed to broadcast prisoner murders. Hamas spokesman Abu Obadiah said they will start executing hostages for every civilian house that's bombed without warning. Sophie, this horror is far from over.
Rita, just all the reports that keep flooding across all the news channels all across the world. It's just absolutely horrifying to hear that. Earlier today, I heard there could be 10,000 Australians in Israel at the moment. Obviously, immense concern for people who are there on the ground. And then I've also heard that the flights, some of the big airlines have stopped flights in and out of Israel, which is a real concern for people trying to escape. Rita, this is horrifying stuff, and everyone should be concerned by what we are witnessing unfolding at the moment.
And I think we are going to see tension there for many weeks to come. I don't think this operation is going to be quick. Now, one of the harrowing images from the attack is the abduction of Noah Agamani, who was enjoying a music festival when Hamas terrorists killed more than 250 concert goers. They raped and executed women and abducted men and women, including Noah. Sophie, I cannot imagine anything worse than knowing your loved ones are in the clutches of terrorists. We've got a statement here from Noah's father.
What can I say? All my life, since she was born, I tried to protect her and hug her and support her and love her. And here, at this difficult moment, at least cheer her up. I couldn't offer her a hand.
He couldn't protect her. I cannot think of anything more harrowing than the plight of those families, to have their loved ones held in Gaza, being used as human shields, threats from Hamas that they're going to be executed on camera. I mean, how can you even comprehend that?
Rita, that footage was just so harrowing of the young lady being taken away, and then the father just seems so, as rightfully so, just so immensely distressed by this situation. Just seeing the gravity of that, I think, really brings home to us here in Australia what is going on there. It's important that we do make sure the media shows these clips and they are shared to show the gravity of how serious this is, of what it's occurring there. Especially given we've got so many in this country, including politicians in the Australian Parliament, who are seeking to minimise, to rationalise, if not defend, what has happened. It's shameful. I'll bring you some examples of that shortly. Now let's go to what happened in Sydney overnight, and it frankly was nothing short of disgraceful. Our most iconic landmark, the Opera House, was lit up in the colours of the Israeli flag, but Jews were not safe at the Opera House last night. Indeed, New South Wales Police warned members of the Jewish community to stay away
They couldn't mourn at the Opera House, a moment that was supposed to be about solidarity instead turned into this. Sophie, what can you say about that chance of F the Jews, F Israel, at a time where members of the Jewish community were expecting to gather there to mourn and to have a moment with the Opera House lit up in the flag of Israel?
Rita, what sort of country are we living in here in Australia where the police minister in New South Wales advises people that they can't go to the Opera House because it's not safe? That is frightening in itself. There's calls today for the New South Wales police minister to be sacked over that. The fallout from this will be immense. But that's those images, which will no doubt circulate all over social media, already have, and will probably go global if they haven't already. This just paints Australia in a shocking light, and surely we can do better than this.
Oh, I've got messages from Europe, from the US, all around, from people going, what is happening in Australia? How can you have Jews not safe at the most iconic Australian landmark there is, the Opera House? That is just shameful. I mean, and after what has happened in Israel, you can just imagine what members of the Jewish community are feeling to witness that, to see a vision of that, and then to be treated like that in their own home. Of course, Sophie, it didn't take long for the Greens to show their true colours. Let's look at some of the work of Greens MPs. This tweet from Jenny Leong. She wrote, unprovoked, this is disgraceful statement from Defence Minister Richard Marles. It is also appalling that tonight the Opera House would be lit up in the support of Israel. What about all of the Palestinian lives lost since occupation? And she was hardly alone. Let's have a look at another Greens MP, Marine Faruqi. She posted, one colonial government supporting another. What a disgrace. Hashtag Free Palestine. This was in response to Parliament House being lit up in blue and white in support of Israel. So if I think it's undeniable at this point to acknowledge that the Greens are virulently anti-Israel. And I think members of the Jewish community surely understand that now after seeing the reaction this week.
I don't know how they can understand it, Rita. It just seems so hard to comprehend that they would put out tweets like this at such a difficult time for so many people. Again, our politicians surely can do better. I won't even repeat some of the things we're hearing in the media, some of the disgraceful acts of violence towards Israelis, their young children, Rita. I mean, how is this okay?
It's just appalling. And Richard Marles' statement, I've got to say, what was good, it was strong, it was unequivocal. But these Greens MPs, and Marine Faruqi, she migrated here. So if she thinks we are some sort of a disgraceful government, disgraceful nation, why are you here? I mean, I've got to say that as a migrant who came here, why anybody would choose to come to a country that they loathe. That I don't understand.
Rita,
there are other options.
You can speak from experience, obviously, but why would you come here and then just completely bag our country? She's so critical of our country, makes it a place that she just seems to despise, Rita. I mean, Australia is a wonderful country. Yes, we have our flaws. Yes, we've seen some of these disgraceful acts, but I'm proud to be Australian. I'm proud to live in Australia, and this commentary from politicians certainly doesn't help.
Now, it's confusing on a number of levels, but also because the Greens and the left in general support the voice so strongly, but then they ignore the Jewish people's history in Israel. It seems that doesn't seem to factor into the equation at all. And there has been plenty of crossover between those two issues. The most enthusiastic Hamas supporters and those seeking to rationalise the violence against Israelis are often also voice advocates. How about this one? This includes a character called Imam Ibrahim Dadoun, who took a break from his pro-voice advocacy to praise the terrorist invasion of Israel. Now, the race-based referendum is mere days away. Both sides are making their final pitches as the nation gets ready to head to the polls. Let's hear this compelling argument from the yes side.
This is an opportunity, my fellow Australians, just like we see the opportunity on our future here. We see that the totems of the kangaroo and the emu are really important.
Well, I'm convinced, Sophie.
Rita, what was that all about? If that's their argument, where they're trying to make us vote yes in this referendum, which is so important for us moving forward, I think they've just lost their argument there. Look, the polls show that they are going down and going down badly. But let's wait till Saturday. I'm always sceptical with polls, Rita. But I will point out this. Where is Linda Burney? Now, she was on Q&A last night, but she seems to have been taken out of this argument in the final week. And we haven't seen Marcia Langton either. There's certain people in the yes camp, they seem to be tucking away because they are damaging to it. So I think they are in real trouble, but it is not over yet.
Well, Ray Martin was there instead of Linda Burney, I suppose. She was certainly invited to that debate for the Channel 7 program, but she cannot take on Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price.
Well, they said that, Rita. They said that she wouldn't appear on the program because she didn't want to debate Senator Jacinta Price. I mean, take her on for her arguments. This is what we need to see to work out whether we vote yes or no. The fact that she can't even take her on, I think just shows she has no strong argument.
Well, Senator Price absolutely dismantled Ray Martin. I mean, he is a veteran communicator, TV presenter. You would think after the horror few days he had when he really did the yes cause quite a bit of damage with his dinosaur and dickhead speech, that he would be going into that debate armed with some facts, armed with some compelling arguments. But frankly, Jacinta Price ate him up. Even I felt a little bit sorry for him watching. And Linda Burney would be no chance. So in Parliament, she's asked a simple question that she surely would expect to receive. These aren't gotchas. And all she does is get up and read a prepared statement. Completely ill-equipped to do that role. Now, let's go to the UN. We know they have the finger on the pulse. This is what they've been obsessing about. International Lesbian Day. Yep, they posted this about, remember, trans lesbians are lesbians too, really. Let's uplift and honour every expression of love and identity. Sophie, the world is reeling from images of women being brutalised on the streets of Gaza, women being abducted, raped, murdered, and the UN Women's Group is preoccupied with trans lesbians?
I can't even believe what you're saying, Rita, because it seems so absurd. The only thing I could think that's going on is there's some young people in there that perhaps on social media and think this is a great post, but it's really unacceptable at a time, as you said, what the world is witnessing right now.
And frankly, I'm not a lesbian, but I've been assured that they're not fond of penises. So bodies with penises aren't lesbians and can't identify as lesbians, if I can quote members of the lesbian community who've expressed that viewpoint to me. Now, I think that was a very apt point to go to lefties losing it. Now, let's start lefties with Mrs. Arkansas herself, Hillary Deplorables Clinton, who may be one of the world's slowest learners. Not content with calling half the country deplorable, she now wants Trump supporters to submit to re-education.
Those MAGA extremists take their marching orders from Donald Trump. You know, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen.
From one lefty losing it to another, let's go to Walmart at Westchester County in New York. Now, this woman went on a bit of a rampage, causing damage. She struck an officer in the face and called him an effing white trash. And when he tried to apprehend her, she screamed, "Walmart is racist," over and over again.
Walmart is racist! 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 Walmart is racist!
I think she's trying to communicate a message there. Did you grab that? Apparently Walmart is racist.
But Rita, what I found interesting was everyone was standing around with their phones, just watching on. This was like some sort of theatre going on.
Well, because before that scene, she had gone on a bit of a mini rampage and trying to destroy a product and slapping an officer. So yeah, the crowds had gathered and she put on a show for them. God bless. Now, we all remember the "It's Ma'am" dude. Well, he's a contender for his title.
Yeah, there's a big man. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Not a man. I'm not a man. You. I'm a
Another lefty losing it, and no one triggers these lefties more than Trump. And talking about Trump, remember when he was president and we had relations being normalised in the Middle East? We didn't have Russia invading Ukraine. Even North Korea were behaving. They were meeting with South Korea for the first time in many years. But the media narrative during that period of relative peace and prosperity was this.
Well, we were on the brink of World War III because Donald Trump took the worst possible option given to him in a slideshow.
In this country, we have begun to overestimate the dangers of impeachment and underestimate the dangers of a deranged president retaining control over a nuclear hyperpower.
We cannot wait around while Donald Trump is in control of the nuclear weapon.
Your objection to potentially going into World War III cannot be procedural.
The biggest danger of the Trump presidency is that we are always just a Trump whim away from nuclear war.
They say it's World War III, but I'm looking out my window. It's very quiet in those smoking craters out there.
Has to be told that it's his job to avoid World War III.
One Democratic congressman sent me a note this evening and say this president wants this war.
And that compilation from Mays Moore, and there's plenty more where that came from. I played you just a fraction of the endless hyperbole and hysteria we saw from the media, Sophie, about Trump starting World War III any minute.
That's pretty crazy stuff, Rita. But I think we will see more and more of this type of commentary as we head into the presidential race. So it's only just beginning.
Of course, and they will not let what's actually happened in recent years change that narrative, that Trump equals World War III and someone like a Biden in the White House, well, that's just peaceful times. Now let's go to a regular on lefties losing it. It's the always unhinged Joy Reid from MSNBC.
Care about Twitter or X or whatever Elon Musk calls it these days, but you should care that a man who parrots anti-Semites and transphobes is actively promoting people like Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Tucker Carlson. As one of the world's richest oligarchs, Elon Musk controls a major social media platform and has turned it into a giant megaphone for xenophobic, racist, misogynistic, and anti-Semitic trolls. He has reinstated noted Nazis, white supremacists, sex traffickers, and white supremacists, did I mention that already? Some of whom he has personally engaged with and amplified.
Oh, big words there from a woman who lied about her blog post being hacked when it was discovered she was posting some bizarro 9/11 conspiracy theories and homophobic content. But this is MSNBC for you. If they're not ranting and raving about Trump or Ron DeSantis, it's Elon Musk.
But Rita, was Twitter, X, was it any better before Elon Musk took it over? I think it's had pretty vile content the whole way through.
Oh, absolutely.
So to blame it all on him, I think is really quite pathetic.
Well, not only has it had that sort of content all the way through, he's actually got rid of a lot of the pedophilia content, child trafficking, all sorts of things that are against the law. And he's actually revealed the suppression of certain very legal viewpoints, mainstream viewpoints that happened under the previous ownership. Sophie Ellsworth, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Rita.
Joining me now is GB News presenter Darren Grimes. Darren, the support for Hamas and what happened in Israel has been quite distressing to see. Has shocked many. We've seen pro-Palestine groups gather around the world and hold banners like this at a football game in the UK. Tell me about the British reaction to Hamas's barbaric attacks against Israel.
Do you know what, Rita? I think it can be separated into two separate groups, which is one, you've got the Labour Party types with their Free Palestine banners and holding at stalls at Labour Party conference. The British Labour Party have their party conference right now. There's LGBT Labour right next to a Palestine stall. I mean, the irony isn't lost on me, Rita, and I doubt it's lost on you either. But then there's also the other group, which is, I think, a more sinister group. And it's a group where Britain has been an open house for those who despise our values, Rita, right? We've invited people here in our cities, bursting with people who are celebrating terrorist exploits, where the liberal left applaud them like demented seals. And then you've got the likes of our Home Secretary. And I know you've covered this. I know you've spoken about this. Our Home Secretary said that multiculturalism in Britain hadn't been a massive success. It had been a failure. I mean, understatement of the century. Because what we've seen here is we've ushered in a parade of those who remind us that this grand experiment that we were placed on with multiculturalism, with diversity is our strength, that we hear ad nauseum, we're living in a fractured society and not a truly united kingdom, right? Where this mantra of diversity being king, it's a farce. And I think the recent events on our city streets are the proof in the pudding on that one. And don't get me started on Celtic Football Club, because I think the fans ought to be massively ashamed of themselves. They've been called out by former players who've said that they're brainwashed, and I couldn't agree. It's neck deep, Rita, in tribalism, in nasty, hard left politics. And there's a whole host of things going on here. But I'm really worried about Britain's future if these kinds of people are the ones who are calling this, because the police response has been abysmal, Rita.
Well, yeah, because some of the rhetoric and language from the pro-Palestine sign has been just terrible. I want to play you a little bit from Manchester Friends of Palestine president. Let's listen to her.
They are full with pride. This is the first time that something like this happens in modern day history. For 16 years, Gaza has been under blockade, and for the first time, they are actively resisting. They are not on the defense, and this is truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and we are both in fear, but also in fear of how Israel will retaliate and how we've seen it retaliate overnight, and the missiles that it's launched and the attacks. But also, we are full of pride. We're really, really full of joy of what has happened.
Darren, I'm at a loss to know what is joyous and prideful about what we are seeing happen in Israel. We're talking about women and children being murdered, women being raped and tortured, entire families being taken hostage, hundreds of unarmed civilians killed. Joyous? I mean, these people could not stoop so low to speak like that. And then we've got this woman calling for celebrations in the wake of the attacks.
Yesterday was a victory. As a Palestinian, yesterday was a victory for freedom fighters in Gaza to break out of a 15-year blockade so successfully under the inhumane genocide from Israel was so beautiful and inspiring to see. It shows us that it shows us as Palestinians, and it shows the world as us from Palestinians, that we will always fight and we will always resist, and we need to celebrate these
Yeah.
I'm at a loss with words. I mean, you look at the vision we've seen out of Israel, the savagery, the cruelty, children, women, unarmed civilians, brutally murdered, and we're hearing that talk, that it's just resistance. It's justified. And just in recent hours, we've seen those scenes in London outside the Israeli embassy. Again, to be doing this outside the embassy to me is just shocking, Darren. What's your reaction to how the Jewish community must be feeling hearing these speeches and seeing those scenes in the centre of London?
I hope they feel as angry as I do, and I hope that they've started to voice their concerns, Rita, because someone, for that display that you've just seen in London outside of the embassy, for example, someone had to get permission to close that entire street down, to set up a microphone, right, and PA speakers and all the rest of it. So how on earth, how the flying flamingo has this been allowed to happen, right, outside of the Israeli embassy, just 2 days after a terrorist attack in which hundreds, if not thousands, we don't know the final total yet, have died, have lost their lives. A rally to show solidarity with terrorists, with people that are banned under British law. Hamas is a terrorist organisation. It's a proscribed organisation. You know, Britain, Rita, is a nation in which referring to someone by their biological sex is viewed as a hate crime, right? But celebrating the kidnap, rape and murder of Jewish people, that isn't a hate crime worthy of the police getting involved. So, you know, if any British Jews need any help, Rita, I say that they just tell the police they've been misgendered and then the police will be over in a jiffy. That is the bizarre and sick scenario that we in Britain find ourselves in today. So, you know, my heart goes out to the British Jewish community and the international Jewish community, because those scenes where women are being flaunted like ghastly trophies, where, you know, you've got elderly Holocaust survivors being herded into Gaza as hostages, or all of the displays of rockets with the Iron Dome Israeli defense system trying to actually keep the Israeli people from being bombarded to death. That, to me, pulls on my heartstrings. And I don't know why anywhere, but especially not this country, this sceptred isle of mine that I am so proud to be from, should be a playground for the what I would call toxic whims of Hamas and Iranian cheerleaders. But that's where we are, Rita. I would love nothing more than to see these people actually removed from the streets, because I'm all for free speech, but I am not for the glorification and incitement of terrorism. Because we in Britain, right, are we a country that says you fancy a side of terrorism with your scones whilst you're here visiting Britain? Do we cheer on terrorism? Do our bobbies act so scared that they cower from mobs like that? No, we shouldn't be. We mustn't be. And I'm livid, Rita. Honestly, I'm just so angry that this is going on in my country.
Darren, Mayor Sadiq Khan has condemned the attack, saying Hamas is a proscribed organisation. What they have done in the last 24 hours in Israel, causing the death and injury of hundreds, is unacceptable, and it's got to be condemned, and I do condemn that. We've also got to recognise the history of disturbances in the Middle East. Well, there you go, Darren. He called it unacceptable. But will London landmarks be lit up in the colours of the Israeli flag, as landmarks around the world have been, including here in Australia? What is London planning to do to show solidarity with the people of Israel?
So far, Rita, the only monuments that have been lit up are those in the gift of the Conservative Party. So Parliament, for example, was lit up in the colours of the Israeli flag. You had number 10 Downing Street lit up by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. But Sadiq Khan hasn't done anything as far as I can see. I haven't seen any monuments that have been lit up so far. Maybe that'll change. But I actually think, you know, Sadiq Khan, he likes a bit of race baiting, Rita. He's been partial to it once or twice throughout his career. And I wouldn't be surprised if he sees a key constituency of his, the kinds of people that we see out in the streets of London celebrating the monstrous attack that took place over this weekend. So I don't count him as a true ally of Israel, so I won't be expecting anything anytime soon. I would just ask viewers, Rita, to just ask themselves why it is that it's unique to Israel, because any other country in which this happened, I imagine London would be one of the first to light itself up in colours in solidarity in which this kind of atrocity had taken place. You know, on 9/11, the world didn't come out in a fiesta for Al-Qaeda's deadly shenanigans that went on there. You know, ISIS in Paris, we didn't see anyone on the streets for then. 7/7 in London, we didn't see a street party going on then. Yet Hamas against Israel, you know, they do what they did. They terrorize the Israeli civilians. And in this country, we do not see politicians, especially those on the left, turning this country into one that says we stand with them. Instead, we pander to those who do not wish our country well, who do not wish Israel well. We are playing, I think, the role of a patsy to these people. And I think that's a real mistake. We have, as I say, rolled out the red carpet for those who loathe us. We've endured threats from those who detest us, and actually we're starting to coddle the ones who undermine us. And people like Sadiq Khan, politicians like Sadiq Khan, they are useful idiots for these people. That's what worries me so greatly.
Darren Grimes, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Rita.
Joining me now is Prague University writer Alexis Wilkins. Alexis, we're seeing utter terror coming out of Israel. The images of innocent citizens being kidnapped, tortured and murdered are beyond sickening. And yet in the immediate aftermath of these attacks, we have seen pro-Palestinian groups out showing their support for the invasion and terrorist attacks. Let's take a look at some of those scenes in New York and Washington State.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. Free, free Palestine. Free, free, free Palestine.
And further north in Canada, and finally, let's have a look at this aggravating piece of vision from New York. This woman was also miming bombs exploding like it's some sort of a massive joke, taunting those grieving opposite her. Alexis, it's not just the protesters. A disturbing number of media pundits and certainly many academics are bending over backwards to try to rationalise the barbaric violence of Hamas.
Rita, seeing the celebrations is really bizarre considering the horrible tragedy of terrorism that's happened. We're seeing it in the United States. We're seeing it, like you said, in Canada, really across the world. And usually, you know, you see the right getting accused of being bigoted or being insensitive or all these accusations. But right now we're seeing complete silence from the left. We're seeing, you know, the Democratic Socialists saying nothing, posting nothing, no response there in any capacity. And I see it as a complete failure of commenting, honestly.
Well, let's have a look at some of the worst media reporting. The anti-Israel brigade have a big influence among the woke mainstream media, and the New York Times is no exception there. They've been quick to put the blame, or at least share the blame, with Israel for the terrorism that country has suffered. But as it was pointed out, this isn't the first time they have been anti-Jewish. Author Ashley Reinsberg pointed out 90 years ago, the New York Times employed a Nazi collaborator as its Berlin bureau chief. 80 years ago, they covered up the Holocaust so the paper wouldn't be seen as too Jewish. 70 years ago, they refused to support the creation of Israel. 20 years ago, they spread an anti-Semitic blood libel that fueled the Second Intifada. Today, the New York Times attacks Jews on the regular, as they will again this time. This is what they do. Alexis, you can say this about the New York Times, they're slow learners.
Yes. No, we certainly see a pattern here. And like with a lot of liberal media, you see a pattern of dishonesty, you see a pattern of covering up things. And that's no different this time. You know, having a filter on what we are allowed to understand is just run-of-the-mill, par for the course for leftist media.
Now, for years, we've talked and warned about the left, the far left's march through the institutions and their almost total capture of academia. And here is just further proof of that lunacy that's taken hold, and even at some of the very best universities, or what were once the best universities. Look at what students at Harvard University have to say about the terrorist attacks against Israeli civilians. They wrote, "We, the undersigned student organisations, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence." The statement goes on, but you really don't need to read anymore. Alexis, this is clear support for the murderous Hamas terrorists. They're putting all the blame on Israel. What has happened to Harvard? What has happened to a university that is supposed to be among the very best in the world?
Well, unfortunately, I feel like this is just part of a circumventing responsibility for the side that they likely support, given the record that academia has as of late. And, you know, we've seen the United States, we unfreeze $6 billion. Iran received it. A couple days later, they kick out their nuclear UN testers to make sure that they're at fair nuclear levels. We see this horrible Hamas attack happen. And so I can't help but feel as though this angle is in part to facilitate a better blame factory than immediately looking and pointing fingers at the freed up budget, the fact that we abandoned a lot of materials in Afghanistan and they had those as resources. I know we've seen a lot of videos, and it's hard to discern what's what, but you can see some of the weaponry is very obviously American. And so it's really difficult. And I think that this is part of, unfortunately, it's always the worst of times that we see it, a redirection of blame. And the only way to do that is to involve academia and try and involve organizations like the New York Times and try and have this narrative already going out. And it's really tragic that it's the day after and even the day of we started to see it, that we see this narrative come to light. And I really think it's not where the conversation needs to go right now.
Now, over on ESPN, where far left talking points are occasionally interrupted for live sport, they've again made some bizarre statements about slavery. Let's have a look.
The contracts, you know, are the new slave chains, right? So, you know, you have to sign this contract and sign this document and sign this document. It's like you're binded to this. And then if you break that, that's your livelihood, that's your life. So we the new slaves. Athletes are literally the new slaves because we need this. Our families, our friends depend on this contract to eat.
What on earth are they saying there? Are they comparing sports contracts where people earn millions of dollars for playing sport to some sort of a slave agreement?
it seems to be just another version of searching for victimhood. You know, they're talking about these contracts when there's obviously money involved. Even college students that were playing in athletics a couple of years ago, they're even allowed to make money on their talents. And so these contracts are not without high dollars attached to them. I see this clip and I don't know what they're going to think of next to tie it back to some sort of narrative.
Most people watch sports to get away from all the stresses of daily life, including politics. Is the last thing you want to see if you're a sports fan. Alexis Wilkins, thank you so much for your time today. Joining me now is royal commentator and host of the To Die For Daily podcast, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, it seems every person under the sun is ranting and raving about the new David Beckham documentary on Netflix. The 4-part series is giving an inside look at his career, relationship and family. Victoria is obviously a key figure of this documentary, and folks are loving the interaction between the two, including Bex calling out Victoria when she tries to paint herself as some working class gal.
We're very working class.
Be honest.
I am being
Be
honest. I am being honest.
What car did your dad drive you to school in?
So my dad did.
No, one answer.
My dad.
What car was it?
All right, it's not a simple answer
What
because.
car did you get your dad to drive?
It depends.
No.
Okay,
What
in the
car?
80s, my dad had a Rolls Royce.
Thank you.
Kinsey, Harry and Meghan could learn a thing or two from Posh and Bex about, well, not playing the victim for one, and actually putting together a documentary or reality series that is worth watching and isn't going to bore the audience silly.
I mean, isn't it fun to watch David hold Victoria accountable? I mean, even in that playful way, it was interesting to see him hold her accountable. But I think that if we are really going to compare, you know, David and Victoria to any members of the royal family, it would be William and Catherine. It's that, you know, that flirtation, that public flirtation, that discretion, that being vulnerable without being a victim. That's what we saw in this, you know, docuseries. And I do think a lot of people turned it on, not expecting to like them more when they were finally done with it. And that's something that Harry and Meghan were not able to accomplish with their docuseries.
Now, Harry's bosses at Netflix have announced that their most controversial and final season of The Crown will premiere on November 16. Harry's Hitler uniform is expected to be a featured storyline. How do you think they will handle this infamous little episode, Kinsey? Harry was obviously very young and silly. Do you think they will go easy on him for what was a youthful mistake?
Well, I do think we typically get worked up about The Crown and then it disappoints us a little bit. Sometimes it's a little bit boring. But with everything, with Israel under attack right now, I do think that the Sussexes need to be I think that they need to act before The Crown has a chance to bring this back up and put this in front of everybody. Again, I think that Harry and Meghan need to be proactive in this case because it's going to anger people. It's become such a heightened, sensitive subject. And Harry needs to face it head on before the world is reminded of it. I think that the Sussexes should be in crisis mode over this particular instance right now, whether that's volunteering with an organization, offering a large sum of money to an organization in support of Israel. I do think that they need to be proactive in this particular case because the Crown could put this on everyone's radar again, and he could see an entirely new generation of individuals angry with him over this thing. You know, and I know he blames Catherine and William, the Prince and Princess of Wales, in spare, but nobody bought that.
Of course. Well, this is why I really don't want them to make a great deal of fuss about it, because it will just be a case of blaming everybody and playing the victim again. So we'll look forward to that. Now, the fallout of Harry and Meghan's exit from the royal family continues. We've got new claims from a royal biographer, Tom Bauer, who told Daily Express UK that the Duke of Sussex and his wife Meghan Markle have undermined the monarchy and King Charles made a terrible mistake. He says the king should have cut the California-based royals off straight away. He said he should never have allowed their children to be made a prince and princess. Kinsey, I've got to say, I kind of agree with this. It seems the palace was almost bullied into some of these decisions, and you cannot appease people like Harry and Meghan. The more you give, the more they want.
Well, I mean, what are they the prince and princess of? Are they the prince and princess of the Walmart in Santa Barbara, California? They're really not. In America, we don't recognize that. So I think that idea is silly. I'm going to give King Charles a little sympathy here, because I don't want people to forget that Harry and Meghan, despite lying later and saying that it was unconscious bias, they did accuse a mystery member of the royal family of being a racist. That was a horrible period in the palace's existence. And I do think that he risked everybody believing Harry and Meghan's accusations were true by cutting them off and by disassociating with himself with them. There would be people out there that would see that as translating into, oh, it's true. Everything Harry and Meghan said is true. By being kind, by inviting them to some of these events and still acknowledging them, I think it's made Harry and Meghan look pretty foolish. And so I sympathize with the king here, Rita. Is this the first time in history that we've disagreed?
Well, yeah, I got to say, I just think it makes zero sense when you've got two people who have not only slammed the family and the institution, but have declared they're no longer working royals. They're not working royals. So why are their children being given these honours of being a prince and princess? I just think it's rewarding poor behaviour. It's basically being blackmailed into giving these concessions because they're going to make claims of racism. But yeah, you and I do normally agree, so this is unusual. Now, let's get to this latest gripe from Prince Harry. Well, it's not all that new. It was in his autobiography, but we somehow missed it, probably because, we were focused on all that talk about his todger. We missed Beardgate, Kinsey. Yes, whilst we were all focused on his Estee Lauder habit, we missed a bit about the brothers, William and Harry's battle over beards. Let me explain. In the memoir, Harry says he was driven to ask his grandmother, the late Queen, for permission, explaining that the beard made him feel calmer. Yes, she said, you may keep your beard, writes Harry. But then I explained it to my brother and he bristled. Not the done thing, he said. Military rules, so forth. Kinsey, Harry seems to have an excellent recall of every teeny tiny conversation he's ever had with William. This is just, again, another little bizarre extract from the book.
And when that's perfectly said. It's amazing how he can remember word for word these arguments between him and the Prince of Wales. However, Rita, when you get him on a stand in court under oath, we lose count of how many times he says, I don't know, I don't recall. Do you remember when he was, challenging the tabloids?
Yes.
And he specifically said, what stories, really ruined your childhood? And he's like, I can't remember. So interesting when he picks and chooses when that memory kicks in. But this is just another example of how immature and entitled this young man is. He wants us to believe that Prince William is sitting around devastatingly jealous of him, when in reality, William's a rock star.
Well, he's going to be the king. That's at the end of the day. It may not be fair, but he's the firstborn. He's the future king, and Harry was never going to have that honour unless something terrible happened to William. So yeah, this is an interesting little tidbit there. And he's not a young man anymore, Kinsey. He's about 40 now. The fact that he obsesses about these minor details like they matter is interesting in itself. Kinsey Schofield, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And thanks for your company today. I'll see you Friday night for the Rita Panahi Show and Sunday morning for Outsiders.